Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Triangle Be Well TV. I'm your host, Howard Jacobson, and I'm joined in the studio by associate producer Nathan Lerner. Hello, Nathan.
Hi, Howard. How are you?
So tell me, what's going on? What are you doing here, man?
Yeah, well, I'm entering this summer for Amnon, and I'm having a blast. This is my actual first time that I'll be hosting a show with another host on Nissan Communications, and having a great time.
Awesome, awesome. So feel free to, join the conversation, ask questions, make faces at me, all the things Amnon does. Amnon's right here as well in the background. Hey, Amnon. Hello. See, we're not flying blind. We're under a steady hand. So I wanted to talk today about. Have I said who I am yet? I did. I'm Howard Jacobson. I am the proprietor. I'm the head coach at Triangle Be Well at Tribe Well. I like thinking of myself as like the head coach, and I'm sort of thinking I have for my members of Triangle Be Well, which you can join if you go to trianglebewell.com/join for not much money, $150 a year. You can get all sorts of fun health advice and support. And look, they're kibitzing. There's two of them. They're kibitzing here. All right, focus me. Okay, there we go. Unbelievable. It's like kindergarten here, man. Kindergarten with $30,000 of tech. All right, fine. Let's focus. So if you join three mornings a month on Monday mornings, first 3 Mondays of the month, I have what I call the huddles. They're the healthy habit huddles, and we get together as a group and we talk about healthy habits, about how to include healthy habits in our lives. And I just read a statistic. I have no idea if it's true or not, but if it's from Gretchen Rubin's new book, Better Than Before, saying that our lives are consisting of 40% habit. Like 40% of what we do any given day is just habitual. We don't even have to think about it. We won't remember it if we don't focus on it. It just sort of happens autopilot. So if we want to change our lives, we've got to address that 40%. So that's what those huddles are for. Anyway, huddles reminds me of the coach sending in the play. So I like to think of now everything I do as sort of a huddle. Like, let's get together, let's figure out what the situation is, what our strategy is, what our tactics are going to be, what our goals are, and then let's break and go do it. So today is the second part of a 2 or 3 part series, depending on how much I get through and how fast I talk, about talking with your doctor about healthcare. So to recap, last week I talked about why you need to talk to your doctor. I mean, we don't, there's plenty of people we don't need to talk to. Like, you don't have to why to talk to your plumber about you replacing your toilet. You just say, hey, my toilet needs replacing, and your plumber comes in, gives you a new toilet, and you're done. You don't have to talk to the cashier at the supermarket about your coupons. You give your cashier the coupons, you pay for your food, and you bag it and go. Why do we need to talk to our doctors? So we talked about a couple of things. First of all, that medicine is not evidence-based, and we see that the vast disparities between the way medicine is practiced in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. Well, if it was evidence-based, it would be pretty much the same everywhere, but it's not. We saw that the medical profession is heavily influenced on so many levels by the pharmaceutical industry, to the extent that most doctors are just basically the sales and distribution arm of the pharmaceutical industry. And we talked about when you become plant-based, when you increase your intake of healthy foods and you increase your healthy activities, exercise, stress management, good sleep hygiene, etc., then you no longer represent the huddled masses. You no longer represent the number of people who are in those studies. You're an outlier. And so you have to understand how to translate your status, or how to translate medical studies and scientific studies of efficacy of different drugs and procedures and lifestyle changes and all that into your situation. Because it's no longer about you. Right? So you have to figure out, if at all possible, how these data apply to you, or may apply to you, or don't apply to you, so that you can make good decisions. So that was last week. Today we're going to talk about what to talk to your doctor about. You know, you can go in and you can say, so how was your golf game on Sunday? Or how many more payments you got on that boat? But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about chit chat. I'm talking about having conversations that support your position as an informed consumer of medical care. So we're going to talk about two basic things in this category. We're going to talk about sort of routine healthcare, which is the sort of stuff that you get when you're well, when you are, or at least when you're asymptomatic. In other words, if you don't have symptoms, you're still part of the medical system, right? Now, this is different from, let's say, plumbers, right? You typically don't call the plumber and say, hey, everything's fine in my house. You want to just come over and poke at some pipes and check out some valves, you know, just for the heck of it, right? We don't do that with plumbers. We don't call the roofer up and say, hey, my roof isn't leaking. Do you want to come and just knock on some tiles and see what's happening? You know, there are plenty of professionals who provide important and valuable services for us that we don't call up when there's no symptoms. So the medical profession is a lot different in that respect, in that they're expecting us to interact with them even when there's no overt need to. So what are the two ways in which we're supposed to interact with the medical system? So one is supposed to go in every year for your physical, right? And do you go in for physicals?
Sometimes. It depends if I'm busy or not.
Okay, so you have a pretty casual attitude toward it. Yeah. What makes you, when you do go in, or what are the forces that tell you you should have a physical?
I would say most likely either you're like, oh, I need a new shot for something that came out, some virus, or just checking up because it's been quite a while. I haven't gotten seen at all.
Okay, cool. So you think of it a little bit like like a car. Like you want to keep it running, so you may get it checked out, get the oil changed, get a shot. If there's some new vaccine that you want to take, and just make sure everything's running okay. So sort of being responsible and having peace of mind. So those are two really important psychological triggers that the medical profession hooks us on. So peace of mind and responsibility. And here's the thing: what happens during the physical? Like, you get a bunch of tests. They draw some blood. They look at you. They maybe do a cursory physical exam, look in your ears, look in your nose, ask you how you're doing, you have any symptoms, and then they send you away, and then they're going to give you the results of your tests. And I don't know about you, but like, whenever I have tests done, I become a nervous wreck until I get the results, no matter how unlikely it is. Like, if someone came and said, here's a test to find out if you're actually from the planet Mercury, I would be worried until I got the results that I'm an Earthling, that, geez, maybe I am from Mercury. Right? So
they psych you out.
They do psych you out. The tests, once the question is raised, you can't really unask it until you get a response. So here's the thing: any healthcare has got to provide a value. And the value here is clearly psychological. So if you go for your annual checkup, you feel like, well, I'm a responsible person. I'm taking care of myself. Men, by the way, tend not to get checkups. Women do. The standard view is that women get sick and men die, because men can ignore a problem until it kills them. Right? The woman has a little thing and she goes, oh, I better go check that out. The man is like, there's a lump on his head the size of a cassava melon, and he's like, oh, it'll be gone. It's nothing. It'll be gone in the morning. I just need a bigger hat, right? Because men are like terrified of finding out bad news.
Yeah.
So anything they can avoid. So here's the thing. So there's this psychological benefit that we get when we go to our physical. We feel responsible, we're taking care of ourselves. If there's other people who care about us or count on us, we're doing right by them, and we're being man enough to face the possibility of some bad news. All right? Yeah. So there's that psychological benefit. I would say that that's not enough. that in order for physicals to be justified, they actually have to help us in our health. So people have done these studies where they say, let's take a look at people who get physicals and people who don't, and find out, like, the people who get physicals, in theory, should be healthier over a long period of time. We should catch disease. If we have treatments, if we're giving them shots for things, that they should live longer.
Yeah, you definitely think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's absolutely no evidence that this is the case. There's no evidence that, so if you think about the annual physical exam, instead of it as an exam, if you think of it like a treatment, like if you have two groups and you give one a treatment, that group should do better, not worse. And it turns out that people who get physicals do no better, and sometimes worse, depending on the study, than people with no treatment at all. And so you have to ask the question, like, why? That seems really counterintuitive and really weird, because we've got this whole psychological thing going on, right? That I feel good for doing this. I'm responsible. I'm manning up or womaning up. I'm going to, look this thing straight in the eye, and yet there's no actual benefit for it. So why is that? Because clearly, if you go for your physical and you have some disease that was asymptomatic and they find it, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing that they would find it early? And obviously, treating it early is better than waiting till it becomes, terrible. There's a saying in organization development and personal development: kill the monster while it's small. So if you've got a problem with someone, if someone is like, saying annoying things, you could wait until like 10 years have passed when you're ready to just sort of strangle them, or you could say something like the first day, like, I'm having an issue with this, and you kind of deal with it, right? Kill the monster while it's small. And in the medical world, if there's a disease progression, you want to get it as quickly as possible while it's small, head it off, deal with it, and solve the problem. So that's essentially what the annual physical exam is about finding those early problems and solving them. So why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it make people well? So a few reasons. One reason is, and again, we're back to money, is if you think about it, the annual physical exam is basically a loss leader for the pharmaceutical medical industry. So it's a way to take healthy people and turn them into patients. If you have a car mechanic that you trust, that's a really important relationship, right? Someone that you think, because you don't know, right? You take your car in and the guy says, well, your radiator hose needs to be replaced. Is your car symptomatic? No, it's still running fine, but it's, the radiator hose is getting old. Looks like it's going to develop a crack in a few years. We should take care of it right now. You've got to trust your mechanic. You've got to trust that your mechanic didn't just have a boat payment come due and is trying to make the money any way they can to cough up the money so they don't lose their boat, right? And we all know stories of mechanics who are just complete crooks, right? So if you've got someone that you trust, and you know that, like, when you trust them, that means if they say there's a problem, there really is a problem. Like, would they spend the money on their own car just as easily as they're going to ask you to spend the money on your car? And if they fix it, are they going to fix it right? So if you've got someone like that you really trust, you have a gem. And you'll probably tell everybody else about that person because you don't want them to get taken by a crooked mechanic. Now, in the medical world, we have the same problem, except it's worse because we know less about bodies than we do about cars. So you have to trust that the doctor is not just trying to hook you into a treatment plan. So if your mechanic says, well, we need to rebuild your carburetor, I don't know how much that's going to cost. Somewhere between $500 and a couple thousand. Do you ever had your carburetor rebuilt? Or?
No, I haven't.
No. Sounds right? A couple.
Something like that.
A couple grand.
A little expensive.
Right. But so if your doctor says, okay, well, you're pre-diabetic and you've got to go on this drug, well, we could ask Amnon how much diabetics pay per month for their meds. Very often, it's about $1,000 a month after copays. right? So it's not just a one-time thing. This is now making you dependent on the pharmaceutical industry. You got a number for us?
It's different. I mean, yeah, on Medicare, it's like $4. I don't know, something like that. But it's $400-500 easy.
$400-500 easy.
For type 1,
Uh-huh.
it is about 800
$800 for type 1.
with insurance.
Uh-huh. With insurance. So if and the doctors get paid by insurance too.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like worse than a carburetor.
Oh yeah.
Right. So because the goal of our relationship with an auto mechanic is they fix the car so we don't need them tomorrow. Right? We don't want to keep getting the car fixed every single. You don't have to say, okay, well now here's the thing with your car. We just fixed it, but the fix requires us to. We need to inject some chemical into your engine every single day. So you need to come in or once a week or once a month, or we'll sell it to you and you can do it yourself. Right? But the medical industry creates a dependency that once you're in, it's like Hotel California. You can never leave, right? Because no doctor says, okay, well now you're a type 2 diabetic, but we've cured you. You don't need to take the medicines anymore. You're going to be on this for life. You got high blood pressure, you're on it for life. We're going to put you on statins, you're on it for life. You've got gastrointestinal issues, we're going to put you on proton pump inhibitors for life. Right? Because they're not getting better. This is okay. You've got this disease, and we've got to medicate it for the rest of time. So that would be fine if it was true. But again, we're asking the question: why do the annual physical exams not make people better? So one reason is that catching things early is not always the best thing to do. Because sometimes you catch something early and you have no idea if it would ever turn into something. You have no idea if this little issue that you find is going to be a problem down the road. So maybe you're treating something that would never have been a problem. This happens a lot with what are called incidentalomas, which is a term coined by, I think, Gilbert Welch, who wrote several books on healthcare, including less medicine, more health, or the other way around? I can't quite remember. And should I get tested for cancer? Maybe not, and here's why. So an incidentaloma is a cancer that's discovered, or something cancer-like, a tumor, a growth, that's discovered accidentally. You're not looking for it, but there it is. There it shows up. And there's a bunch of reasons why it's probably a good idea not to find those. So one reason, again, is that we don't know if it would ever have progressed. But once you find out you've got this tumor inside you, whatever it is, whatever the growth is, the reaction is, we got to cut it out. I can't live with that. Psychologically, it's just horrible to think that you've got something that could kill you growing inside of you. Do whatever it takes, radiate, surgery, chemo, anything, cryotherapy, high-intensity protons, Fruit Loops, whatever is going to get rid of it. Please, let's just get rid of it. We can't live in this culture with the knowledge that there's something possibly inside us that could be problematic. So what's the trouble with that is that a lot of the treatments are devastating to our bodies. They're very, very harmful. And those treatments are only justified if the thing that we have is really, really bad. If the thing that we have is not really, really bad, it's like, those slapstick scenes where like the Three Stooges are trying to kill a fly and they're using sledgehammers and swords, and they're just they're like beating up each other and they're destroying their environment while the fly is flying around. The fly was not a big deal, but the treatment turns out to be. So one reason that annual physical exams fail the "is this good for me" test is that they very often catch things that we'd better off not knowing about, that probably wouldn't turn into anything. And it's very hard to predict what's going to turn into something and what isn't. But the vast majority of things that we find with an annual physical exam are not things that we should ever be treating at all. So we've got this bias that like knowledge is good, more knowledge is better, more treatment is better, earlier treatment is better. None of those turn out to be true. So the second problem with the annual physical exam is that it diagnoses us as sick. And here's what I mean. So just about every single condition is a continuum, right? So we give names to diseases, but it's not that simple, right? So if I say, it's sunny out today, like sunny could be an extreme. And then I say it's overcast or it's cloudy. That could also be an extreme. But how many times do you go outside and it's not clear what it is? Like it's partly cloudy or is it partly sunny? We call it cloudy and then the sun peeks out from behind a cloud. There's a little, oh, it's partly sunny. In other words, there is a huge continuum from completely cloudy to completely sunny. And what we call anything in there is very dependent on, on randomness, on what we think of, on what it was just before. There's no clear demarcation line. And in life, in biological processes, there are very few demarcation lines. Like, am I tall? I'm 5'10". Does that make me tall? Well, last night if I was playing in the NBA Finals, no. When I go sing at a nursing home, yes. But who is tall? And when does tall start? And when does short start? There's no answer. There's degrees all the way through. It's very, very fuzzy. So this is a subset of what's called fuzzy logic, where things are not binary. So what does this have to do with the annual physical exam? You know what? If you are diabetic or not is not binary either. Right? It has to do with blood glucose levels over time. It has to do with spikes and lows. It has to do with the persistence of the A1C, the hemoglobin A1C in your blood. And so somebody with an A1C of 6 is more diabetic than someone with an A1C of 5, but less diabetic than someone with an A1C of 8.2. But it's a continuum. So how do we decide when someone should be treated, should be medicated as a diabetic, should be considered a diabetic? At this point, we're looking at, ideally, in medicine, we're looking at basically a graph. So you want to picture a graph. It's a line graph, so it has a horizontal x-axis and a vertical y-axis. And along that graph, so down at the bottom, are the different A1C numbers, or the different blood pressure numbers, or the different cholesterol numbers, whatever number we're looking at. It's on a continuum from very, very low, possibly too low, to very, very high. So if it's blood pressure, 0 is very, very low, probably too low. I wouldn't go for 0. That's not good. But 200 is not good either. So somewhere in the middle. So then what we're going to look at is the y-axis is going to be some sort of health outcome. So somewhere in there is going to be optimal health. And we want to look at what the curve looks like. So where is their optimal health? And usually there is what we call a scree line. So somewhere where it drops off pretty precipitously. Like if your blood pressure goes from 140 to 145, like at that point, is that where you start having health problems? Or is it still pretty much the same between 140 and 145, and you don't worry until you get to 160? Or is the big difference between 110 and 120? And that's where scientific studies come in, big aggregate population studies and clinical trials that establish what that line is. Where is the point when you flip over from everything's okay to now we got to worry? And is that the point at which you want to start treating, whether it's through medication or lifestyle, education, diet change, whatever? So ideally, you want to look and see. So if blood pressure of 0 is too low, we want to be higher than that. 10 is too low. 50 is too low. 90. Now, 90, we're starting to look pretty good. And we're talking systolic, the top number. And then we get up to 150, 160, and then we start seeing problems. And then we get up to 180, 190. So we say, okay, so now we have a range in which we want to medicate. And that's been done. The trouble is, there's two problems. One is those numbers change over time. And you know who changes them? Task forces. So there would be a hypertension task force put together by cardiologists. And you can see this in the record that those task forces almost never increase the diagnostic criterion. They almost never say, we're going to raise the number so that fewer people are considered sick. The number always gets lowered. And the people who lower the number are almost always paid consultants or actually working for or lobbyists for the pharmaceutical companies who make the drugs that are created to treat the people with that condition. So in other words, if the American Diabetes Association Task Force, at one point, I think it was in 1999, 1997 or 1999, lowered the diagnostic criterion for diabetes, all of a sudden, like 30 million Americans woke up the night before they were fine. The next morning, they're diabetic. Their numbers didn't change, but the diagnostic criteria dropped. And so now there's 30 million more people who are potential customers for diabetes drugs. You guys got...
Yeah, so we have George in the chat, and he just messaged, I'm going to call my doctor and inform that I'm not showing up to my physical next week.
All right, so this is a good time for me to say that this is not a show for the offering medical advice of any kind. It's for informational purposes only. And I would say before you make that decision, be informed. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you what the statistics say. So here's a good place to look is if you do a New York Times search. There's a couple of folks who write for the New York Times. One of them is his first name is escaping me. His last name is Emanuel, and he was one of the architects of the Affordable Care Act. And he's pretty pro-medicine, but he has published stuff showing that annual physical exams are not, medically justified. And also look for the writing of Aaron Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L, who is a New York Times columnist who writes on medical research, and he's pretty good about looking at the research. So I would say, don't just take my word for it. I can point you toward places. The other place to look is Gilbert Welch's book. Oh, and I want to get the name right. I think I have to pull this up, take my iPad off of airplane mode and go find this because so if you're going to make this decision, I want you to make it good. So let's go find the Amazon app. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of the book because Overdiagnosed. I'm going to say that, and I'm going to do a quick search to justify it. Oh, look, Logitech webcam. Overdiagnosed by Gilbert Welch. There it is. Making People Sick in the Pursuit of Health. It's on Amazon, $10.73, Prime. You can get it. You can get it in 2 days before your doctor's appointment. Read through it. And he also wrote another book recently called Less Medicine, More Health, 7 Assumptions That Drive Too Much Medical Care. So thank you for saying that. And again, don't just listen to what I say, but your goal is to make your own informed decisions. Okay, so back to, and thanks, George. Back to this issue of overdiagnosis, that if all of a sudden we say, okay, here's something that happens. So if children aren't growing fast enough, if you have a kid and you take them to a pediatrician, they're going to show you where your kid is on the height and weight growth chart. And ideally you want to be like 50%, not too heavy, not too light. But you know what? There are always going to be people who are going to be at the ends of the spectrum, right? So if it's a bell curve, not everyone is going to be average. Some kids are going to be very, very tall and very, very heavy. Some kids are going to be very, very short and very, very light. That's a natural bell curve. But what an example of what medicine does is they tell pediatrician that the bottom 3% have a problem. There's some sort of stunting going on, and we need to medicalize that through some sort of treatment protocol. Well, guess what? There's always going to be a bottom 3%. Right? So there's always going to be people. So no matter what the bell curve is, there's always going to be somebody that we're going to medicalize and say, well, they're abnormal. And normal and abnormal, in the absence of outcome data, to say, well, if this is you, then you have a problem. Then we're just at the whim of these task forces, which are paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. And the goal of those task forces, the goal of the pharmaceutical industry, is to increase the market. Because they have captive audience. If our doctors tell us we're sick and we need this drug, we gobble it up. And you know what? When you change the diagnostic criterion, and when you go from, it's not like we're saying we're adding a few more people. We're adding a huge number of people. And again, what we talked about last week, remember, the sicker you are, the more you benefit from treatment. And the more the treatment is justified when you weigh it against the potential risks and side effects. But the people, when you lower a diagnostic criterion from here to here, you're getting a whole bunch of people who are right on the margin. They're almost, yesterday they weren't sick. So it's like they're not really sick, or they're just a little bit sick, or they're a little bit abnormal. So those are the people who benefit the least from treatment because they're closest to normal. So the treatment is not going to do much for them, but the side effects don't care. And the risks of those treatments are just as great. So that's one thing about changing the diagnostic criteria. The second thing is sometimes that bell curve of here's the number on the bottom and here's the outcome, there is a significant difference, let's say, between people with blood pressure of 110 and 140. And we see that people with a systolic blood pressure of 140 do much worse than people with a systolic blood pressure of 110. That doesn't mean that medicating them will make it better. So we can't just look at the unmedicated outcomes. We have to look at clinical trials of medicated outcomes, of what happens when you take the people at 140 and you drop them down to 120 or 110. Do those people do better? And the answer almost always is no. Again, the people at the extremes, the people at 160, 170, and 180, they do better if you drop their blood pressure, but not to 110, to 130 or 140. If you assume that we can use medicine to make people normal, and that if the people who are medicalized to 110 are as good as the people who are naturally at 110, that's an assumption you have to prove with a clinical trial. And it can't be done. It hasn't been done. I'll give you an example of the difference between a medical intervention trying to mimic a lifestyle outcome and failing. So there is a strong body of evidence that was developing through the 1980s and 90s that a vitamin or a provitamin called beta-carotene was a good thing. Like the more beta-carotene people had in their blood, the less likely they were to get cancer and heart disease. So the pharmaceutical industry, or in this case, its younger cousin, the supplement industry, got really interested in this as well. If we sell beta-carotene pills to people, we can help lower rates of cancer and heart disease. And who is not scared of cancer and heart disease? Our number 1 and number 2 killers. So there's a huge market for beta-carotene pills. So somebody decided, let's do a slam dunk study. Excuse me for a little bit of water. The slam dunk study was called the Finnish Smokers Study. There was a study of tens of thousands of Finnish men, Finnish as in double N, from Finland, who smoked. And smokers are at much higher risk of heart disease and cancer than the general population. So they were divided into 3 groups, but I'll keep it simple and say there were 2 groups. There was a beta-carotene supplement group and a placebo group. So a group that got a pill that looked identical to the beta-carotene, but was different, was inert, was a sugar pill. And so neither group knew which one they were taking, and neither did their doctors know which they were taking. And the study was looking at outcomes, meaning deaths from cancer and heart disease, or heart attacks and strokes. And the study was supposed to run 10 years. That's, a big cohort, tens of thousands of men over a 10-year period. We're going to get a definitive answer about how great beta-carotene is as a supplement, because when you supplement with beta-carotene, you are restoring these men's body chemistry to an optimal state. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So what would you expect the outcome to be? Which, do you think the beta-carotene group or the placebo group would do better?
Probably the placebo, actually.
Yeah, you've been listening to me too long. You're a terrible foil. You're not a dumb straight man at all, right? So here's what happened. I got so excited my voice broke. Here's what happened. The beta-carotene group did so poorly, the study was stopped early because they were dying at a rate 46% higher than the placebo group. And they also were getting 29% more heart attacks. So they were getting more cancers, more heart attacks, more strokes, more deaths, because we gave them beta-carotene to boost their levels to what would be considered a natural healthy level. So in that case, the medicalized approach to making people look normal fell way short. We don't know why that happened. But when you think about people getting beta-carotene from their food, they get it from like orange vegetables and fruits, from banana, from peaches, from carrots, from colored red, orange, yellow bell peppers. Beta-carotene could be the most important thing, or it could be a marker. The same way we've talked about on this show that if you take a Mercedes hood ornament and you stick it on a 1992 Yugo, you haven't created a Mercedes, right? It's the hood ornament is not the cause or the central element of an expensive, reliable car. It's just a hood ornament. So maybe the beta-carotene is just a marker for, if you're have a lot of beta-carotene in your blood, that means you're eating a lot of good fruits and vegetables. And that's what's protective. And just extracting the one thing doesn't seem to be helpful. So just like I've talked on this show many times about things like high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, that the markers that we use to assess it are symptoms. They're outcome measures. So when you artificially lower those outcome measures with drugs, when it's really bad, you get some benefit. So if someone has sky-high blood pressure, 200 systolic, 130 diastolic, that's causing clear and present danger to limbs, to eyes, to wherever there's a... Aww. Did you rip this off your car?
I just did.
Wow, what you will do for entertainment purposes. So, there, now my net worth just doubled. There you go. Thanks, man. If you hold it this way, it's a peace sign. Or no, it's always a... Which one is the... I don't know.
What?
The difference between a Mercedes and a peace sign. Is it the same except for the beveling?
It's not. Peace sign is 1 and 3.
1 and 3? You sure? We have to look it up later.
It's got
But
4
there's-
sides.
Does it?
Yeah, it's got the stick at the top and then 3.
It's 3 down. Okay.
Well, yeah, it's like a stick with 2.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it now. All right, but back to our...
You're too young.
I'm too young. I don't remember peace. Hey, I was born when Johnson was just escalating Vietnam. I remember. I was a war baby. So, where the heck were we? Okay.
Aren't you glad I'm here?
I'm glad you're here. Yeah, Nathan, can you take over the show? I never realized how much I'm known as distracting. You're much better behaved. All right, no. So we were talking about symptoms. So that if you use medicine to lower, So if someone has a blood pressure of 200 over 130, that's causing like retinopathy, neuropathy on the extremities, then it's an emergency. But if the person is just like 140 over 90 and you lower it with drugs, you're not actually changing their disease state. You're simply masking, essentially, if we keep to the car metaphor, we're putting some black duct tape over the check engine light. And therefore, we're not actually helping them get better. So a lot of what happens in following an annual physical is essentially putting black duct tape over a check engine light. That we're going to, and this is the problem with medicine, right? It's just that the annual physical exam helps people get there sooner before they're even symptomatic. That they're entered into this medical mill of masking symptoms rather than treating root causes and getting actually well. So where was I? I was talking about the annual physical exam, and the other part of the annual, it's essentially the same thing, although it's not exactly the same thing, is the screening test you're supposed to get every year. So you can get them as part of your annual physical exam, but also you can go get tested for hypertension. Hospitals have hypertension drives or high cholesterol drives. You can get tested for thyroid disease, and every group that is going to make money off of a treatment wants you to come in and get tested. Women are encouraged to get mammography, to get breast exams, from 40 to 50 every 2 years or every year. Women over the age of 50, I believe, are told to get DEXA scans to determine bone density loss. And all of these diagnostic tests, the same as the annual physical exam, with the exception of the PAP test, which does save lives, and a test called the FIT test. I can't remember what the I stands for, but it's a fecal self-exam that you send into a lab for colon issues, colorectal cancer and other issues, with the exception of basically those two in asymptomatic people as screening tests for the general population. The other ones do not save lives. What they do is they have large false positive rates. They make a lot of people scared that they're at risk for this disease. Mammography, if a woman has mammograms over a 10-year period, the chances that she will have a false positive, being told that she has cancer or that there is a problem when there isn't, is about 1 in 2, 50%. And that mammography, if you take 2,000 women over that 10-year period, you'll save 1 life, and you will ruin at least 10 due to unnecessary treatments and the outcomes of those treatments. The same is true of the PSA test for asymptomatic men. The same is true of the DEXA scan for bone density issues. That these screening tests, along with the annual physical exam, take healthy people, asymptomatic people, and turn them into sick patients whom the medical establishment can then drug for the rest of their lives. What you got?
Quick question for you.
Yeah.
So you've been saying a lot about how like annual physicals can be harmful to the individual, a healthy individual. What are some ways that people can find to make sure that if they are a healthy individual, they aren't getting treatments they don't need, or people that are unhealthy can actually find the right treatments they need to become healthy?
Right. So if you're asymptomatic, at this point, we don't have some sort of fancy technology like, the screening machines in Elysium or science fiction stuff where bones can just sort of scan you and tell all the things that are going to go wrong and fix it at a molecular level or an atomic level. That's still science fiction. So at this point, if you are a healthy person, you want to avoid doctors. Sick people need doctors. Now, if you're healthy by accident, you're eating crap, you're not exercising, you're smoking, you're not sleeping well, then, I think in the annual physical exam, if it's about, okay, your numbers are high and here's how we're going to address your diet and lifestyle. If it was about that, then I would think it could be reconfigured. If it was an educational opportunity for people to say, okay, here's where you are now, here's where you're headed, and we're not ready to medicate you for it because it's not going to do any good. In fact, if we medicate for you for it, what it will do is give you a false sense of security, so you'll keep doing the stuff that will lead you down this road. But if we say, here's where you're headed, but if you make these changes, you can be headed in a completely different direction, then I think the annual physical would be a wonderful thing. But basically, sick people take medicine, sick people visit doctors. You take your car to the shop when it's not working right. You call the plumber when your toilet is leaking. You don't just call the plumber to say, hey, my toilet's doing fine. Come on over and see if you can find anything wrong with it. I wonder if this flapper shouldn't be replaced. You wait, right? And at that time is the right time to get it replaced. So if people are sick, if they don't feel well, if they're fatigued all the time, if they're aching, if they can't get out of bed, if they have skin problems, if they feel bad, that's a sign that you need to change something. Now, you can go to your doctor and your doctor is immediately going to suggest a medicine for you. I would suggest becoming your own advocate, doing this research, joining Triangle Be Well, and at that point, you can then advocate for yourself and you can say, well, I'm not feeling well, so the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to stop eating cheeseburgers with bacon, and I'm going to stop smoking, and I'm going to start exercising, and maybe that will help. Before we immediately say, okay, well, this is your lifestyle, that's a constant, that can't be fixed, so therefore we're going to try to medicate you better, because that's a fantasy. That doesn't happen. So that's all I got for today. I will see what I got left on this topic. I do want to talk a little bit about when there is an issue. So the question that you raised, for the third part of this series next week, I'll finish up. I'll talk about what happens when you are sick. How do you talk to your doctor at that point? And then we'll actually talk to how to talk to your doctor, how to have the conversation. It can be hard because your doctor is an expert and they have white coat authority, and you might be shy about it, or you might feel like it's none of your business. So we'll talk about mindsets and strategies to actually talk to your doctor and have a good conversation. You're not trying to beat them up. They have a skill set, they have valuable knowledge, but you have to use it in the right way. You wouldn't invite your plumber over and have them look at your gas furnace. I mean, you might, but they would probably they probably don't have the experience to help you with it. So you don't want to talk to your doctor about drugs and surgeries until you've exhausted all the other possibilities. Until, if your plumber comes over and you're just like, my food processor doesn't work. Well, try plugging it in first before you call the plumber, right? Or even before you call the electrician. Try plugging it in first before we go to crazy diagnosis of things that may or may not help. Start with diet and lifestyle. All right, so this has been a production of what? What, I can go? I can finish? I'm getting semaphore here. I wasn't in the Navy. I don't know what this all means. So this has been another episode of Triangle Be Well with the Three Stooges, Larry, Murley, and Co. What the heck? All right. What's in this flask anyway? Did you change it around when I wasn't looking? It's been brought to you by Mercedes. Where's my check? You can find out more at trianglebewell.com. You can /join and join all the fun, join the huddles. I'll be your head coach and guide you to health and wellness and how to avoid unnecessary medical treatment and how to become an informed consumer of your own health care. Amnon, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
And Nathan, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You piloted us through the shoals of Scylla and Charybdis, and we're going to take it out with aplomb. And is that recording? Just kidding. Everything's going great. Thank you guys, and thank you everybody. As always, be well, my friends.
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.